You can rely on us, Lavender said, making her height of 3 feet 2 inches stretch as tall as possible. No, I can't, Hortensia said. You are only shrimp. But you never know. You may find a use for you one day in some undercover job. Tell us just a little bit more about what she does, Matilda said. Please do. I mustn't frighten you before you've been here a week, Hortensia said. You won't, Lavender said. We may be small, but we're quite tough. Listen to this then, Hortensia said. Only yesterday, the Trunchbull caught a boy called Julius Winkle eating licorice or sorts during the scripture lesson, and she simply picked him up by one arm and flung him clear out of the open classroom window. Our classroom is one floor up, and we saw Julius Rotwinkle go sailing out over the garden like a frisbee and landing with a thumb in the middle of the lettuce. Then the Trunchbull turned to us and said, "From now on, anyone caught eating in class goes straight out the window." Did this Julius Rotwinkle break any bones? Lavender said. Only a few, Hortensia said. You've got to remember that the Trunchbull once threw the hammer for Britain in the Olympics, so she is very proud of her right arm. What's throwing the hammer? Lavender asked. The hammer, Hortensia said, is actually a ruddy, great cannonball on the end of a long bit of wire, and the thrower risks it round and round his or her head, faster and faster, and then lets it go. You have to be terrifically strong. The Trunchbull will throw anything around just to keep her arm in, especially children. Good heavens, um, Lavender said. I once heard her say, Hortensia went on, that a large boy is about the same weight as an Olympic hammer, and therefore he is very useful for practicing with. At that point, something strange happened. The playground, which up to then had been filled with shrieks and the shouting of children at play, all at once became silent as the grave. Watch out, Hortensia whispered. Matilda and Lavender glanced round and saw the gigantic figure of Miss Trunchbull advancing through the crowd of boys and girls with menacing strides. The children drew back hastily to let her through, and her progress across the asphalt was like that of Moses going through the Red Sea when the waters parted. A formidable figure she was, too, in her belted smock and green breeches. Below the knees, her calf muscles stood out like grapefruit inside her stockings. Amanda Tripp, she was shouting. You, Amanda Tripp, come here. Hold your head, Hortensia whispered. What's going to happen? Lavender whispered back. That idiot, Amanda, Hortensia said, has let her long hair grow even longer during the hose, and her mother has plaited it into pigtails. Silly thing to do. Why silly? Matilda asked. If there's one thing the Trunchbull can't stand, it's pigtails, Hortensia said. Matilda and Lavender saw the giant in green breeches, advancing upon a girl about 10, who had a pair of plaited golden pigtails hanging over her shoulders. Each pigtail had a blue satin bow at the end of it, and it all looked very pretty. The girl wearing the pigtails, Amanda Thripp, stood quite still, watching the advancing giant, and the expression of her face was one that you might find on the face of a person who is trapped in a small field with an enraged bull which is charging flat out towards her. The girl was glued to the spot, terror-struck, pop-eyed, quivering, knowing for certain that the day of judgment had come for her at last. Miss Trunchbull had now reached the victim and stood towering over her. I want those filthy pigtails off before you come back to school tomorrow, she barked. Chop them off and throw them in the dustbin. You understand? Amanda, paralyzed with fright, managed to startle. My mommy likes them. She plates them for me every morning. Your mom is a twit, the Trunchbull bellowed. She pointed a finger the size of a salami at the child's head and shouted, You look like a rat with a tail coming out of its head. My mommy thinks I look lovely, Miss Trunchbull. Amanda startled, shaking like a planks mangy. I don't give a tinker's toot what your mommy thinks, the Trunchbull yelled, and with that she lunged forward and grabbed hold of Amanda's pigtails in her right fist and lifted the girl clear of the ground. Then she started swinging her round and round, her head, faster and faster, and Amanda was screaming blue murder, and the Trunchbull was yelling, I'll give you pigtails, you little rat. Shades of the Olympics, Hortensia murmured. She's getting up speed now, just like she does with the hammer. 10 to 1, she's going to throw her. And now the Trunchbull was leaning back against the weight of the wheeling girl and pivoting expertly on her toes, spinning round and round, and soon Amanda Thripp was traveling so fast she became a blur, and suddenly, with a mighty grunt, the Trunchbull let go of the pigtails, and Amanda went sailing like a rocket right over the wire fence of the playground and high up into the sky. Well thrown, sir, someone shouted from across the playground, and Matilda, who was mesmerized by the whole crazy affair, saw Amanda Thripp descending in a long, graceful parabola onto the playing field beyond. She landed on the grass and bounced 3 times and finally came to rest. Then, amazingly, she sat up. She looked a trifle dazed, and who could blame her? But after a minute or so, she was on her feet again and tottering back towards the playground. The Trunchbull stood in the playground, dusting off her hands. Not bad, she said, considering I'm not in strict training. Not bad at all. Then she strolled away. She's made, Hortensia said. But don't the parents complain? Matilda asked. Would yours? Hortensia asked. I know mine wouldn't. She treats the mothers and fathers just the same as the children, and they are all scared to death of her. I'll be seeing you sometime, you too. And with that, she sauntered away. Bruce spoke to Walter and the cake. How can she get away with it? Lavenda said to Matilda. Surely the children go home and tell their mothers and fathers. I know my father would raise a terrific stink if I told him the headmistress had grabbed me by the hair and slung me over the playground fence. No, he wouldn't, Matilda said, and I'll tell you why. He simply wouldn't believe you. Of course he would. He wouldn't, Matilda said, and the reason is obvious. Your story would sound too ridiculous to be believed. And that is the Trunchbull's great secret. What is? Lavender asked. Matilda said, never do anything by halves if you want to get away with it. Be outrageous. Go the whole hog. Make sure everything you do is so completely crazy. It's unbelievable. No parent is going to believe this pigtail story. Not in a million years. Mine wouldn't. They'd call me a liar. In that case, Lavender said, Amanda's mother isn't going to cut her pigtails off. No, she isn't, Matilda said. Amanda will do it herself. You'll see if she doesn't. Do you think she's made? Lavender asked. Who? The Trunchbull. No, I don't think she's made, Matilda said, but she's very dangerous. Being in this school is like being in a cage with a cobra. You have to be very fast on your feet. They got another example of how dangerous the headmistress could be on the very next day. During lunch, an announcement was made that the whole school should go into the assembly hall and be seated as soon as the meal was over.